For decades, my dad and I have talked about someday building a house together. We got the chance this year after I bought 30 acres in Tennessee. Lucky for both of us, being 69 years old hasn't slowed him down, so he put in 10-hour days leading the charge to frame my house in the hot Tennessee summer. And before he left his 70-year-old tent to return to my mom in Massachusetts, we sat down to discuss everything we've accomplished so far.
Everything that we've accomplished was in a little over a month. For 3 weeks, I took work off. I put in 10-hour days along with you, and well, you put in 10-hour days for like the better part of a month and a half.
Yeah.
And this is how far we've gotten, which is pretty good,
Yeah.
I think, for this amount of people. We had a little extra help at the beginning. So we got here, or you got here, and there was a foundation, and so...
Well, a slab.
A slab,
Yeah.
And we had the slab poured. That was a few weeks before you got here. And the first thing that we did was measure it.
Right. We measured the slab to check to see if it was the dimensions it was supposed to be and to see if it was square and straight. And it was perfect.
It was great, yeah.
And it was flat.
And very flat, super smooth, which is nice because I was originally going to grind and polish. And now I think I'm just going to polish and not even go through the steps of grinding and sanding all the concrete and everything. I'm going to, put the protective layers over it and just deal with the kind of industrial look. That was super nice. We didn't have to do any shimming. We didn't have to do any sort of adjustments on the bottom.
Not at all. This guy did a great job with this slab. Water doesn't really pool here. When it rained on it, you'd get maybe a couple spots.
A couple little spots. I mean, what can you do about that?
Nothing.
After we pulled the line, we put down the bottom plates.
Well, we built walls and
we built the walls, yeah.
Yeah, we laid out the front wall and we stood it up. We laid out the back wall and we stood it up.
And we did it in half. We actually had the guys to probably lift the entire thing in the end.
Right.
But
my brother-in-law and a friend of mine came down for a few days each at the very beginning to help us.
And the front wall is like full of wood.
Full of them.
There's 4 large windows and a double door, a French door opening. So it's all studs, support studs, jacks, and headers, basically. And we needed one engineered header in order to hold the weight from the other engineered beams in order to have this big open concept room that we're sitting in now that will someday be kitchen, living room area, and dining room. The open room right here is 24 by 20. Slightly under that, 20, because that's what the outside dimensions are.
Because these are 20-foot floor joists above our heads.
Mm-hmm.
And they're on 12-inch centers. The price you pay for wanting a big open space that's 20 by 24.
And that was actually one of the things, not a lot has gone wrong. Nothing big has gone wrong, and it's been pretty smooth sailing. But one of the things, and we realized, and I'm glad we realized it, Peter realized it, is that we had ordered number 2 lumber for everything, including the 20-foot floor joists above us, but that had to be it had to be 12-inch on center, and it had to be number 1 grade lumber in order to meet code for that span. There are several counties in Tennessee that don't require code, or that's not true. You still are supposed to build to code. That don't require building permits and inspections, and then there are some counties that do. And originally I was confining myself to looking in counties that didn't require inspections. In the end, we decided to build to code whether or not we were going to be living in a county that required it. And, it's generally a good idea. It's the 2018 International Building Codes. It's, we're probably way above and beyond because we kept adding things that aren't called for in code. We added a lot of strapping and extra stuff to the foundation. But so sticking with the narrative, we put up the walls, and then what gets a little complicated since we're doing the passive solar house and we need the concrete to be exposed to absorb all the heat and keep things cool in the summertime, we had to anchor the walls to the concrete.
Well, they have to go 7 inches deep into the concrete, these wedge anchors. So helpful hint, that takes an industrial hammer drill. They're 3/4 inch diameter. You got to drill a 3/4 inch hole 7 inches deep into concrete.
We started with the DeWalt, a pretty heavy-duty DeWalt hammer drill, and it just wasn't doing the trick. Luckily, a short distance away, there's a place where I could rent a large plug-in industrial-size hammer drill, and even that wasn't super easy.
Yeah, it struggled in a couple of places. In a lot of places, it just went right in, but I don't know, there's rebar on this floor. Maybe the places it struggled was where it was trying to go through rebar.
Yeah, so it took a lot of time, but in the end, we did get them all in. For the interior walls, we did end up using the DeWalt to drill the smaller anchor holes. Tapcons. In places where it could fit, we put down these 4-inch metal washers and then cranked on those nuts on top. It starts to pull it up, right? So then it anchors in there.
Right. The wedge anchors, that's the way they work. They the bottom of them is tapered in the wrong direction, and then it's got a collar around it that digs into the concrete. So when you tighten them, the wedge, this wedge comes up into that collar and jams it into the concrete. I think the torque spec was like 125 foot-pounds or 150 foot-pounds. It was.
I just got down there and leaned into it. And,
right, we had an extended breaker bar, and that gave us all the torque we needed.
Yeah. It's kind of satisfying though. Code said every 6 feet. We did every 4 feet. We did that with a lot of things just because we want it to be a really strong house for ourselves.
And it's easy.
Yeah.
It's easy enough to do. They have to be within a foot of the corners and a foot of the ends of the plates, I guess, by code.
Yeah.
But code's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not the same kind of bureaucratic BS that you have in other parts of your life. Code is because a bunch of engineers and house builders have decided this is what works. This is what stays up. This house will be here 200 years from now unless it gets directly run over by a tornado.
And even then?
I don't know. There's a lot of stuff holding this house together. But tornadoes.
Well, and so then moving up from the bottom, we did add, are those technically still called hurricane ties at the bottom? We just hurricane tied the sill, the bottom sill to the studs.
Yeah, because otherwise it's just the zip board that's holding the studs to the sills.
And some nails, yeah.
And a bunch of nails, which, is probably within code. But typically if you don't have a slab, if you have a foundation and so you have a wooden floor, then you have your sheathing go down past the bottom plate, past the floor rim joist, and then down to the sills. And so you got a lot of sheathing and a lot of nails.
Right.
But in this case, we didn't, so we threw some hurricane ties in there just for the hell of it.
And then I forgot to mention, before we stood up the walls, we did put sill seal down, that foam, in order to create a nice seal, and so that no drafts will get in. And I think it helps protect against bugs. I don't know.
I don't see any bugs fitting through there
Yeah.
in that space once it's bolted down to the concrete at 150 foot-pounds every 4 feet.
And of course, the bottom plate is pressure treated.
Termites are sneaky little devils. You want them to have to chew through pressure treated wood.
Yeah.
Which they won't.
And once we had 4 walls up, we started pulling some lines again.
Right, we pulled lines. Well, before we even bolted them down, we pulled string on the outsides of the walls or the insides. I can't remember which, but either one, just to make sure that the walls were straight. Just because they're sitting like kind of sort of at the edge of the foundation doesn't mean they're straight. So pulled it at the bottom of the walls, and then tapped them back and forth before we socked down the wedge anchors. And then we measured corner to corner on the tops of the walls to make sure we still had a rectangle. So if the bottom is 32 by 24 and the top is 32 by 24 and the diagonals measure the same, then it's a rectangle on the floor and up on the second floor.
And when we secured everything, what were we like within an eighth or even less?
Within an eighth of the diagonal measurement, which means we would have had to move it 1/16 of an inch to make it perfect. And there's some area in our measurement.
Right. Yeah, an eighth of an inch for that corner to corner was pretty exciting. So, and that was thanks to him being very particular, especially on certain things that matter about getting the correct measurement. And, you know, if you don't have the correct measurement or the correct cut, you just got to redo it because it's going to make things a lot harder down the road.
The errors tend to accumulate, and the next thing you know, you're cutting 38 rafters, all custom to make it go together, and that's bad. So you got to try to hold those dimensions,
right.
And hold everything plumb and hold everything square, the best you can. I mean, I know we're not building nuclear submarines, but it just makes your life easier further down the line.
Then we put in the interior walls because we also had to connect that before we could put the top plates on, the double top plates,
right.
Because we wanted to tie in the interior walls to the exterior top plates.
Yeah, standard construction stuff. Actually, in the background of this video, you know, all the interior walls on the first floor and the staircase.
Yeah.
Because there's only a utility room, a bathroom, and a pantry.
Yeah.
And they're all relatively small, and that's that tangle of sticks you see in the background.
What we didn't do is put the zip on the walls before we put up the walls, which is pretty standard. So the zip is what we're doing for our sheathing instead of typical OSB, just because it has that extra insulation. And again, we're doing the passive solar, and that's also why we're doing 2x6s on the outside, because that's going to be that much more insulation that we can put in the outside, and it's stronger too. But I guess the main reason is for the insulation.
Right, yeah. 2x4s are still plenty strong enough to build a house, but the 2x6s give you that much more insulation. So it's actually getting to be more common in cold places to do 2x6 framing, just to get enough insulation to meet some kind of Energy Star standard or something, so you can get tax breaks or whatever.
Yeah, and it's like we're doing this for ourselves. I think being energy efficient is a smart move on a personal level. I don't think it needs to be mandated, and then so we put the zip on afterwards, but we didn't go up to the second floor, and actually that's one of the things that we still, you can see, need to do. This isn't something, he's going home tomorrow, so that's why we're doing the debrief.
Bye.
And so that's one of those things that we can handle without him. So we weren't going to have him waste his time putting up zip when we could have him doing things that are more integral to the structure.
Something has to tie the bottom floor to the top floor. You don't ever want a joint that's relying just on nails to hold it together. So we went 6 feet up with the zip board, the sheathing, on the downstairs, and then we skipped 4 feet and we did the upstairs walls with the zip already on them. But now when we go back around the house and fill in that missing 4 feet, that'll tie the first floor to the second floor, and then it can't just peel off in a hurricane.
Of course, we also tied the first floor to the second floor with metal strapping.
Right, way beyond code.
Way beyond. But again, there's really pretty little downside. A couple $100 for all that metal strapping, less than 2 hours probably to put it all on, and now it's just like really secure. One of the things that slowed us down was the stairs. And we were back and forth about whether to do a temporary staircase, which was still going to take time, but we had ordered the wood to do the permanent staircase, but it was like, again, most of what we've been doing is way overkill. So we just have these like 2x10s and 2x8s for the risers, 2x10s for the treads and 2x8s for the risers. And I think it's kind of cool. Like, I mean, add it to my industrial concrete floor, and you know, we'll just have the vibe like about to go to a rave in an industrial park or something, an abandoned warehouse. That seemed to take a long time, and that was one of those like kind of hurdles where we're like, well, we need the stairs in order to build the second floor. It's going to be way easier to bring stuff up and down stairs than it is to like set up all these ladders, and we're starting on the second floor. and it felt like it felt like 3 days were spent building the stairs. But that's it wasn't really 3 days.
It wasn't 3 days. I do this thing where I take some sheet stock and some 2x stock, and I build a gauge to mark off the first stair stringer. Now I know you can buy stair stringers from Home Depot and stuff, but they rarely. But then you got to fit the building to the stair stringer. We wanted to fit the stair stringer to the building.
All custom. Everything's custom.
Anyway, marked off and cut the first one, and then traced it onto the other two. And then for some reason, when we went to put it all together, things didn't perfectly line up. So we fired around with that for a while. But in the end, we got pretty decent stairs.
Yeah,
they're solid. We've been carrying heavy stuff up and down those stairs.
And I had to run out and get some trim for it, and of course, like now the trim is sitting there, like getting damaged because you're doing construction. So that's probably why most people don't do their finished staircase until the end. But we'll see what happens with that. It is a really nice staircase, and then obviously put on that like half wall, whatever that's called, banister thing.
Yeah, I don't know if that's in the frame here, but it's gonna be not really a railing, but like a wall, a banister height wall.
And so then after we had the stairs there, we started working on 2 different sections of floor joists for the second floor. Half of the house going north-south, and then the other half it's oriented east-west to get those 20-foot joists so that we have this open floor space.
There's 2 rows of blocking, so going down the width, the 24-foot way in between those 20-foot floor joists, which takes the bounce out of the floor, and it's code, of course.
It's code for the bounce is part of it, but the other part of it is fire blocking, so that if a fire climbs into the ceiling, it can't just spread in the ceiling.
Yeah, but you got to put blocking in anyway, because otherwise, when you load up those joists, they want to twist on you, and then the blocking stops that and makes the floor solid instead of like a trampoline.
And it is pretty solid, despite this big open space upstairs. There's not a lot of bounce in the floor, and then it's getting less with every wall we put in.
Yeah, the engineered beams were literally engineered. You guys hired an engineer to make sure that. So this one here, just behind us and above us, is double.
Yep.
It's a double 2x10. So two 2x10 engineered laminated beams to hold the ends of those.
Yeah, so it was like $350 to get these engineers to actually look at the plans and give us the specs that we would need to meet code in order to get these spans that we wanted. Because in addition to having this 20-foot section, we had to hang them off of something because we still have another 11-something foot span in the dining room area. So what we had to hang that off of, those 20-foot joists, was that engineered beam. And while we were at it, we had him look at the ridge pole as well to tell us whether or not we needed anything engineered up there for like a true beam ridge pole, but we can talk about that when we get upstairs. So okay, we got the floor joists in. We had to go a couple different directions. Did that cause some complications with laying the OSB subfloor?
Not really, because Peter designed it all on 2, 4, 8 foot centers, so all the edges, or ends I should say, landed on floor joists or engineered beams, so really wasn't a problem.
We have only gotten like 3 days of rain, really, since we've been here.
Which was lucky.
It's pretty lucky.
Some of them were a lot of rain.
Only one day was like a complete washout, and the other one happened at night. We had to protect these floors, and there was a little bit of swelling along the seams after that first rainstorm particularly.
Even though they're rated to be left out in the weather for 6 months or something, but still they swell up on the seams.
Not so bad that we had to like replace anything. Well, everybody watching can see how much the floor bounces if we're gonna do that. Just kidding. Does that bounce a lot?
I don't know.
We're kind of in one of the largest spans right now, anyway.
As you can see, the interior walls are a lot busier here on the second floor.
Yeah, downstairs obviously we have the open floor plan. Decided not to do an open floor plan for the master and guest room and their bathrooms. Figured maybe a few walls there would make sense. What we do have, which is kind of cool, is these tall ceilings and just loft spaces instead of doing any sort of attic. Just didn't seem worth it to do the attic. You know what's interesting right now is I'm noticing the passive solar, like obviously you can see that this place isn't sealed up, but like downstairs was way cooler.
Way cooler than the upstairs.
It was way cooler. And we don't even have the overhang that's going to prevent the sun from hitting the concrete. So the sun was hitting the concrete today, and still downstairs it's very cool right now. And it's noticeably hotter up here, even though we're still in the shade.
We are still in the shade, but what the overhang you're talking about is one that's set at a specific distance from the house, and there's going to be two. One at the top of the second floor, which is built into the rafters, and one that's going to be added to the first floor. And the idea is that in the summer, when the sun is high overhead, that puts the windows in the shade, but in the winter, when the sun is out further down lower on the horizon, then it comes in the window.
Exactly.
That's the whole passive solar concept, that the sun heats your house in the winter but doesn't overheat it in the summer. And then the concrete absorbs the heat in the winter and provides a heat sink in the summer.
Yeah. And
it works.
Yeah, it already works, and it's not even like completely functional yet. Got the subfloor down. We put liquid nails under it. Shouldn't be any creaking, but also that's a structural thing. I mean, it's
pretty standard. Everybody glues their floors down these days. In the old days, they didn't, but then your floors creak when you walk on them.
Yeah.
I'm in an antique house. I live in an antique house, and it's like you don't even have to walk on the floors. As the temperature changes, they creak.
Yeah.
And
the ghosts.
The ghosts.
But there won't be any ghosts here unless somebody dies before we finish. But okay.
Well, it's not going to be me. I'm leaving tomorrow morning.
Part of the downstairs, we had 4 guys, and then
only for a few days.
But that did help get the walls up.
Yeah.
For the upstairs, it was just the 3 of us, but we did put the OSB on to the walls before we lifted them the zip board, because we didn't want to have to lift. We didn't want to have to climb ladders and put zip board on the sides.
Right. Carry zip board up ladders and try to put it on. Plus, we wanted to square the walls up before we stood them up. So that's what you do. You lay them down on the floor, you build them, you square them up. We talked about pulling string to straighten the walls downstairs, but we forgot to talk about pulling the string to make the wall straight before we even stood it up.
Right.
Because there's nothing says that when you nail a bunch of 2x4s together that any of them are straight.
Yeah.
And in fact, very few of them were. I don't know where they get wood these days. By pulling a string across the bottom of the wall while the wall was laying down, we could ensure, and then putting the zip board on, we could ensure that when we stand it up, it's going to sit flat on the decking here.
If we had just nailed the zip board on, it would have locked it in place whatever direction it was going.
Right. You could have had a big wall that would rock like this, or you could have had a wall with a bow in it like this that that deer could crawl under. You run the string taut, you put a flat pencil at either end, and now if you keep checking with another flat pencil along the length of the string, you'll know whether the wall is straight or not.
Yeah. So we stood the walls up, and we did it the same thing, half a wall at a time. It means we couldn't tie the 2 halves of the walls together as well with the OSB.
Right. But there's a wall running halfway across the house, right on the center line, 16 feet from each end, so that's going to tie it together pretty well.
Right. And then on the side walls, the east and west walls, we did have overhang, like a flap of OSB overhanging, so we actually did tie those ones together.
Since they're shorter, they were 2 12-foot sections, but the first one we put up, we had what we call the flag, the 4x4 piece of zip board hanging out in space, and then we tilted the other half of the wall up against it, and then and then you nail it to that second wall.
Yeah.
You know, this vaulted ceiling comes at a cost, though. And the cost is that since there's no floor joist to tie the walls together,
Yeah.
you need to support the upper end of the rafters. And that's the
Yeah.
center wall. That's that big center wall.
Right.
I don't know if it's in the frame, but right behind
Yeah,
us.
and luckily, that's what we wanted. Anyway, we wanted a wall going down the center of the top floor. And in the top floor, like I said, we don't want an open floor plan. You want little spaces. So we have 2 bedrooms on the south side of the wall of the house. And on the north side, we have the 2 bathrooms and a little office area, basically. It's actually kind of just a larger hallway, but it's large enough to be an office. And I think it's kind of an efficient use of the space.
Yeah.
Personally.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a nice design. It's your own design.
Yeah. I drew it out, and then Peter actually drew it out to specifications that we could actually build. When I say I drew it out, I mean I drew it on like graph paper on my iPad, just the design of it. And what I was going for, you know, I had this solar. It wasn't just like a random design. It was the passive solar design where you want more of that open floor space. And I played with a few different designs before we landed on this. The sun needs to hit a certain square footage of the floor in order to correctly work as a passive solar home, to get that to be using the concrete as the heat sink. So you have to design it so that there's not too much in the way. You can't have these tiny rooms at the front on the bottom floor. So the open floor plan is nice, but it's also part of that passive solar design.
Since the rooms are smaller, but the ceilings are vaulted and high,
Yeah.
then the rooms won't seem that small.
Right.
So that's kind of a nice thing.
Yeah, I think so.
And then you got the loft spaces above rooms where you don't want to be able to look down into from other places.
Yeah, so above the 2 bathrooms and above the closets, we have the loft space. And that's going to be storage space. You know, it's going to be open so you can see it, so we have to get creative with how we store things up there. I think we're going to try to find some like old luggage and like chests and stuff to put up there. But that's a future Joe and Peter problem. We put a much thinner OSB subfloor on those because we don't need to support, it's not a living space, so we don't need to support walking on it constantly. It's much lower traffic, so that was easier to carry up, a little bit lighter.
Yeah, carry up. You know what wasn't easy to carry up was all this 3/4 inch tongue groove. That stuff was heavy.
Yeah, yeah, it was heavy. Yeah.
But we had the red deck telehandler for that.
Yep, we did create a little something special. And then we just today, Peter built another one for the roof. And so before you left, you wanted to at least get us as far as, basically we've started every step of the project. Nothing's a mystery anymore. This would have been a very difficult project to do by ourselves, just me and Peter, without my dad here, because we just don't have the expertise, the years and years of experience.
Years and years and years. A lot of years. More years than I want to count.
For just go-to, like, how to do these things instead of having to sit there and learn something, like, brand new every single second of every single day. So, at this point, we're probably still going to run into some stuff that is going to slow us down, but at least we're at the point of putting OSB on the roof, and we've already laid out the first row on the north side. We're within reach of getting this thing at least sealed up to the weather so that when it rains, it's not destroying our floors.
So what are you saying? That my purpose here is I build stuff and I know things.
Exactly.
I've been building stuff for more than 50 years.
Go on our online shop and you can buy the shirt. I'm just kidding. I don't have an online shop.
Shirt.
I should, though. I should do that. But.
You should do that. I build stuff and I know things. And how did I learn how to build stuff? Well, kind of funny story. A long time ago, back in like the mid-70s, before you had the internet, I wrote to the Boston Public Library and I asked them to send me a copy of the building code. And they did. And they charged me millions and millions, or maybe tens, maybe ones of dollars. I think literally they charged me like $5.50 or something.
Yeah, but with inflation, that's like what, $30?
To send me a copy of the building code, and I read it. I read it from page to page because it was just a stack of mimeographed sheets. Mimeograph. Does anybody know what that is? Anyway, and I just read it through, and I learned a lot of stuff from that because hidden in the building code is a lot of building tricks if you read between the lines. So, and then since then, I've built a lot of stuff. I'm not a professional builder. I just have built a lot of stuff for myself and for other people, garages and decks. And
started with your barn in 1988. Well, it didn't start there. But
yeah,
that was your first big. That was your biggest project to date in 1988.
In 1988, that was my biggest. I built a barn to attach to my house. I guess I did a good job because some guy came by and said, "Oh, can I look around in your barn? I'm looking for antiques." I'm like, "Well, I built the barn in 1988, so I think
so there's several antiques."
You're out of luck. You're out of luck there.
I mean, some of the saws you have up there are probably antiques.
Actually, they are. Yeah.
At this point. But that's not what he meant. He thought it was an old-timey barn from the 1800s because the house is from the 18 or even 1700s.
Or maybe even 1700s. It's right around 1800, so it could be 1790, could be 1810, we don't know.
But that was the expertise. The walls, built the loft spaces, and then we had to build this double center wall, this second 4-foot wall in order to hold up the rafters. I think we started talking about this earlier. With floor joists for an attic space, that is going to hold the rafters together, but because we have this center wall that goes all the way to the center of the roof, we don't actually have to have those extra joists to hold the rafters together.
Right, because when you load up a thing like this, it wants to do that. It wants to spread out. So there's two ways to fix that. Tie these bottom lines together down here so that it can't spread, which is typical. You have a ceiling with, joists in it, or you can just support the center of it right here, like that. And now this can't go down, and so these can't go out. And that's just well-known engineering stuff.
It is known.
It is known now. I know stuff.
Yeah. Itisknown.com. I actually do own that domain name, which I bought years ago and never used. But anyway.
Really?
You can go to the website, but it won't have anything on it. There's nothing there.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, itisknown.com.
Well, it wasn't known by me. And the 2x10 rafters, for the same reason, not that we need 2x10 rafters to span a 12-foot space. 2x8s, or maybe even 2x6s would have done, but you want the extra insulation.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and then we got the flying gables out there. They're flying out to the sides, and they're just kind of cool. That means your house doesn't get a lot of rain on it. But we also made the flying gables 2x6s.
Yes, because otherwise the trim was going to be a nightmare. And not only do we make the flying gables 2x6s, but we... I'm using the royal we. He did most of this. But we cut down the rafters so that at the end, those are...
mimicking
2x6s. And the reason is that we can put normal trim on there and not have this ridiculous wide trim that would
not have to buy 1x12 trim.
Right.
So we're using 1x8s. 1x8 trim on the ends of the rafters and on the sides of the flying gables. Mm-hmm. And it's just easier, and it's going to look more normal. And
this is the thing in these building projects. There's so many points that we come to, and it's like, oh man, and it feels like it slows down. There's these things that look like there's tons of progress. You put up a wall, and you put up a wall. Tons of progress in one day. Like, boom, I just got so much accomplished. And then you sit there and you put blocking in for 2 days, and you're like, it doesn't look any different. I just spent 2 days putting blocking in. But again, another necessary part of the project.
I spent a day and a half cutting rafters.
Yeah.
Because I had 34 common rafters plus the 4 flying gables. Flying rafters, whatever you want to call them. So it literally took a day and a half to cut all of
But you got to do that downstairs in the shade in the passive solar house with concrete, giving him some nice... That was when it was like 80 something out there.
Yeah, that was a cool day.
It got up to 96. There were some days that were 96, and with the
96.
heat index, it was probably over 100.
And I got to tell you, working up here on this deck when there were no walls here, so there's therefore no shade at all.
Yeah.
And it's 96 degrees. It's like, that was friggin' brutal.
Those days are behind us. And actually, this is like the biggest project you've done to date, and this might be your what do they call it? Not fait accompli.
No, not that. No, magnum opus.
Magnum opus. Yeah,
Might be my magnum opus, right?
Yeah. Of course, the previous video on this channel that you've seen him from is the house, the entire off-grid cabin in Florida that he built. But that's 12 by 24, and this one is 24 by 32 and 2 stories.
And 2 stories. The 12 by 24 was a breeze in comparison.
But the weather was worse in Florida in August.
Oh yeah.
But I was
younger then.
So was I.
When did I build that?
That was about 8 years ago.
Oh.
7 or 8 years ago.
So I wasn't way younger.
You were just a spring chicken in your early 60s.
Right. But hey, I'm not dead yet.
Not quite. Another big struggle is like, how do we get this OSB up to the roof?
This is a redneck telehandler.
Yeah.
If you're a contractor, you have a guy with a telehandler that just lifts you a pallet and puts it right next to the roof for you.
This is the thing about scale, and like I 100% understand why people go to builders to build houses, because they have the scale. They know they don't have to solve these problems. They have the equipment to do it. You know, we're doing this on a little bit of a budget. We have a bunch of tools, but they're all, you know. What's the most expensive tool here was like $350.
Yeah.
Actually,
it's homeowner stuff.
Yeah. Plank, the aluminum plank was probably the most expensive thing, $450 or something for that. And even that has come in handy.
Oh, yeah. We've gotten our money's worth out of it. Well, your money's worth out of that. It's that one of those expanding and contracting aluminum planks. And we've moved it all around this house to give us access to places that we just wouldn't have had access to with ladders. So.
Which is another one of these things about trying to build this roof without having a subfloor or attic space to do it in.
Right. Typical house with a ceiling, ceiling at typical heights is that gives you an attic space, and then you can work on the rafters from the attic space, and this house doesn't have attic spaces everywhere.
Yeah.
Luckily, it has one to the east and one to the west on the north side, but it's all got almost nothing here on the south side.
Yeah.
But we can throw that aluminum plank over these center walls, interior walls, and have, be able to walk back and forth.
Yeah. Well, the GoPro died, but that was about it anyway. This was our 1 month, 1 week debrief on building this house from scratch by ourselves. Like I said, we're losing Harry tomorrow. I mean, it's still alive, but just leaving us.
Haven't seen my poor wife in a month.
The longest they've ever been apart since they've been married.
It probably is, yeah.
And it's all my fault. But it's been a huge help to us. We've gotten this far, and we'll continue to chip away at this house. And it doesn't even feel like chipping away. For a month and a week to get it this far with really just a handful of people, I think is pretty good. And a lot of that's thanks to you. So thank you. I appreciate it.
He's been keeping me living in a tent that was bought in 1950 by my brother-in-law's father. But doesn't get any better than that.
He's just trying to set up the evidence for the elder abuse claims.
There's no elder abuse. No, I decided to live in the tent.
And then you'll be back in October on your way back down to Florida.
Yeah.
So now you have a little outpost to visit on the way.
That's right. We'll stop by here for we don't know how long, but then we'll continue back to the cabin in Florida.
Maybe after that we'll even do a Massachusetts update on your house that you've been working on since 1800. Well, something like that. I can't remember.
I didn't start building that house till 1850.
Something like that. Yeah. All right. And that's where we've gotten, clearly maintaining our sanity very well after this.
One of us.